The throne room of the empire stretched for nearly half a mile in every direction. Giant pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. Thousands of alien nobles stood in perfect rows, their scaled skin gleaming under the light of floating crystals. Each of them stood 8 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and eyes that glowed with inner fire. They were the conquerors of 40 star systems and masters of countless species. They had never known defeat. Daniel Cooper felt very small as he walked down the central aisle toward the throne. He was a human ambassador from Earth, sent to negotiate a simple non-aggression treaty. Earth had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel and made contact with the galactic community. Humanity was new to the stars and needed friends. Daniel had volunteered for this mission because he believed in diplomacy. He believed that different species could find common ground if they simply talked to each other. They did not share this belief. King the Unconquered sat upon a throne carved from the bones of his enemies. He was larger than the others, nearly 9 feet tall, with golden scales and a crown of sharpened metal spikes. He watched Daniel approach with an expression of pure amusement. To him, the human was nothing more than entertainment. Daniel stopped at the proper distance and bowed respectfully. He had studied customs for months before this mission. He knew their language, their history, and their obsession with combat. They measured the worth of every species by their ability to fight. A species that could not fight was a species that did not matter. King leaned forward on his throne. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. He spoke in the common galactic language so that Daniel could understand every word. "So this is a human," the king said. "I expected something more impressive." Laughter rippled through the gathered nobles. Daniel kept his expression neutral. He had expected mockery. The reports about humanity had spread throughout the galaxy, and none of them were flattering. Humans were described as soft creatures from a small planet. They had no claws, no natural armor, and no impressive physical abilities. Other species found them amusing at best and pathetic at worst. "Your Majesty," Daniel said calmly, "I come on behalf of Earth to discuss terms of peace between our peoples. We seek only friendship and fair trade." More laughter. One of the king's advisors stepped forward and whispered something in his ear. The king's smile grew wider. "Friendship," King repeated. "The weak always seek friendship with the strong. It is their way of avoiding the fate they deserve." Daniel remained still. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides. Years of training had taught him to control his reactions no matter what happened around him. Before becoming an ambassador, he had served 15 years in Earth's Special Operations Forces. He had faced death more times than he could count. A room full of arrogant aliens did not frighten him. But he was not here to fight. He was here to build bridges. "We do not consider ourselves weak, Your Majesty," Daniel said carefully. "We simply prefer peace over war when possible." The king laughed loudly at this. He slapped one of his 4 hands against the armrest of his throne. "All weak species say such things," declared. "They hide behind words because they cannot back them with strength." He paused and looked around at his nobles. "But perhaps we judge too quickly. Perhaps the humans have hidden qualities we cannot see." Daniel felt something shift in the room. The laughter stopped. The nobles grew quiet and attentive. He recognized the change immediately. Something was about to happen. "Before we discuss treaties," the king continued, "the human must prove that his species deserves our attention. He must prove that humans have value." "And how would you have me prove this, Your Majesty?" Daniel asked. The king gestured toward a side entrance. Massive doors swung open and a figure stepped through. She was a female, smaller than the males but still 7 feet tall. She moved with the grace of a predator, each step precise and controlled. She wore ceremonial armor of crimson and gold, and twin curved swords hung at her sides. "This is Commander," the king announced. "She is my finest warrior. She has fought over 200 duels and never lost a single one. She has killed enemies from a dozen different species. She is the pride of the empire." Stopped at the center of the throne room and turned to face Daniel. Her eyes were cold and professional. She was not cruel by nature. Daniel could see that immediately. She was simply a soldier following orders. "I have commanded to fight you in ritual combat," King said. His voice dripped with cruel pleasure. "She will not kill you. I want the galactic community to see what happens when weak species reach beyond their place. She will humiliate you. She will break your bones and leave you crawling on this floor. And then, if you still wish to discuss peace, we will consider your request." Daniel then he looked back at the king. "And if I refuse this challenge?" he asked. "Then you admit that humanity is worthless," the king replied. "Your request for a treaty will be, your species will be marked as cowards, unworthy of any place in galactic affairs." Daniel understood the trap. Refusal meant failure. His entire mission would collapse. Earth would be labeled as weak, and that label would follow humanity for generations. Other species would see them as prey rather than partners. He thought of his home. He thought of the billions of people counting on him to represent them well. He thought of his training, his years of preparation, and the skills he had hoped he would never need to use again. "I accept the challenge," Daniel said quietly. The nobles cheered. King smiled with satisfaction. This was exactly what he wanted, a quick and brutal demonstration of superiority. Daniel removed his diplomatic jacket and handed it to his aide, Lieutenant Maya. She stood in the diplomatic section with fear in her eyes, but she also knew Daniel better than anyone. She had served with him in the military. She knew what he was capable of. "Be careful," she whispered. Daniel nodded and walked toward the center of the room where waited. The commander drew her ceremonial blades. The metal sang as it left the sheaths. She took her fighting stance, all four arms ready to strike. Daniel stood before her with empty hands. A servant approached and offered him a simple wooden staff. It was the lowest form of weapon in culture, another insult. He accepted it without complaint. The crowd fell silent. The king raised his hand to signal the start of combat. Eyes locked onto Daniel. She saw a small, soft creature with no armor and no claws. She saw easy prey. She did not notice how still he had become. She did not see how his breathing had changed. She did not recognize the look in his eyes because she had never faced a human before. The king's hand fell. The duel had begun. Circled her opponent slowly. She had killed enemies from 12 different species in her lifetime. She had faced warriors twice her size and brought them down with skill and speed. She had never lost a fight because she never underestimated anyone. But looking at the human before her, she found it difficult to take him seriously. He was so small. His arms were thin and weak. His skin had no scales or natural protection. He held the wooden staff loosely in his hands, almost carelessly. He did not seem afraid, which was strange, but fear often came late to those who did not understand their situation. The crowd watched from every direction. Thousands of nobles filled the viewing platforms, eager to see the human broken. This was entertainment for them, a small amusement before the real business of empire. King sat forward on his throne. His golden scales reflected the light as he watched with hungry anticipation. He wanted to see the human beg. He wanted to hear the creature scream as shattered his limbs one by one. That would make a fine message to send across the galaxy. Had received her orders clearly. Do not kill the human. Humiliate him. Break him slowly so that everyone could see his weakness. Make an example of him. She understood her duty. She would perform it well. In the diplomatic section, Maya gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white. She could not interfere. Diplomatic rules prevented it. All she could do was watch and hope. But Maya knew Daniel's history. She had served beside him for 5 years in special operations before he left the military for diplomacy. She had seen him do things that would have seemed impossible to anyone who did not witness them firsthand. They had studied human military capabilities before this meeting. They had watched recordings of human soldiers fighting with guns and vehicles and machines. They had concluded that humans relied entirely on technology. Without their weapons, humans were helpless. They had not studied deeply enough. Daniel Cooper had spent 15 years learning to fight, not with guns, but with his body and mind. He had trained in combat systems from every corner of Earth. He had studied ancient martial arts and modern military techniques. He had learned how to read opponents, how to predict their movements, how to find weakness in any defense. He had learned how to kill with his bare hands. But more importantly, he had learned how to choose not to kill. Attacked without warning, she was fast, incredibly fast. Her 4 arms moved in a blur of steel, each blade following a different angle of attack. This was her signature technique. It had overwhelmed every opponent she had ever faced. No creature could track 4 weapons moving at once. Daniel tracked all 4. He did not retreat. He did not try to block. Instead, he moved forward, stepping into the attack rather than away from it. His body twisted in a way that seemed to defy physical laws. The first blade missed his head by an inch. The second passed through empty air where his chest had been a moment before. The third struck his wooden staff and was deflected aside. The fourth blade never reached him at all. Daniel was inside her guard now. He was so close that she could not use her swords effectively. For a brief moment, their eyes met. She saw no fear in his gaze. She saw only calm focus and something else she could not identify. Then his staff struck the nerve cluster where her neck met her shoulder. The pain was beyond anything she had experienced. It was not like being cut or stabbed. It was like lightning passing through her entire body at once. Every muscle locked. Every nerve screamed. Her legs collapsed beneath her, and she fell to the stone floor with a crash that echoed through the silent arena. The duel had lasted less than 2 seconds. Lay on the ground, unable to move. Her mind was clear, but her body would not obey. She could see the ceiling high above her. She could hear the absolute silence that had fallen over the crowd. No one was laughing now. Daniel stepped back from her fallen form. He did not attack again. He did not try to harm her further. Instead, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect toward a defeated opponent. "I apologize for any pain," he said softly. "The paralysis is temporary. You will recover within minutes." King rose from his throne. His 4 hands gripped the armrests so tightly that the bone cracked beneath his fingers. His golden scales had darkened with rage. His eyes burned with fury. "What trickery is this?" he roared. "What weapon did you use?" "No weapon, Your Majesty," Daniel replied calmly. "Just training." "Impossible." The king stepped down from his throne, his massive body shaking with anger. "Humans are weak. Humans cannot fight. This must be some technology, some device hidden in your clothes." "I assure you there is no device," Daniel said. "You may search me if you wish. You will find nothing." Guards rushed forward and grabbed Daniel roughly. They stripped off his shirt and examined every inch of his body. They found nothing unusual. No hidden weapons. No technology. Just pale human skin stretched over lean muscle. The crowd murmured in confusion. This was not how things were supposed to happen. The human should be bleeding on the floor. The human should be begging for mercy. Instead, their greatest warrior lay paralyzed while the human stood unharmed. On the ground, felt sensation returning to her limbs. The pain was fatting. Her fingers twitched, then her hands, then her arms. She pushed herself up slowly, struggling to rise. Daniel watched her with genuine concern. "Take your time," he said. "The effects will pass completely within a few more minutes." Looked up at him. Her pride was wounded, but something else stirred within her, something unexpected. In 200 duels, no one had ever defeated her with a single strike. No one had ever moved inside her guard as if her blades were not even there. And no one had ever shown her mercy afterward. King stormed down from his platform. His footsteps made the floor shake. "This changes nothing," he snarled. "One lucky strike means nothing, perhaps was ill, perhaps she underestimated you, it does not matter." He turned to the royal guards who lined the edges of the throne room. 12 elite soldiers, each armed with real weapons, each a veteran of countless battles. "You 12, the king commanded. "Enter the arena, show this creature what warriors can truly do." Daniel's expression did not change. "Your Majesty," Maya called out from the diplomatic section. "This violates all protocols. Ambassador Cooper has diplomatic immunity. He cannot be subjected to military attack." Guards seized her and held her back. The king ignored her protests completely. "Well, human," said with a cruel smile, "you defeated one warrior with your trick. Let us see how you fare against 12. Daniel looked at the guards assembling around him. They carried real swords, real spears, real weapons designed to kill. This was not a ceremonial duel anymore. This was an execution. He still held only his wooden staff. "Your Majesty," Daniel said quietly, "are you certain you want this?" The king's smile widened. "More certain than I have ever been about anything." Daniel nodded slowly. Then he adjusted his grip on the staff and waited for them to come. The 12 guards formed a perfect circle around Daniel. They were elite soldiers, hand-picked from the finest military units in the Empire. Each one stood over 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms. Each one carried weapons designed to pierce armor and break bones. They had trained together for years, learning to coordinate their attacks so perfectly that no enemy could escape their combined assault. They had never faced a human before. Daniel stood at the center of the circle. His wooden staff seemed pathetic against their steel. His small body appeared fragile compared to their massive frames. By every measure that they used to judge combat, he should have been helpless. He was not afraid. Fear was something Daniel had learned to control long ago. It still existed within him. He felt it now, a cold pressure in his chest, but he did not let it rule his actions. Fear was useful when it sharpened the senses. It was dangerous when it clouded the mind. King raised his hand. "Kill him," the king commanded. The guards attacked as one. They moved in coordinated patterns, each soldier covering the others, their weapons creating a web of steel that should have been impossible to escape. This formation had crushed enemies far larger and stronger than the human before them. It was designed to overwhelm any opponent through sheer numbers and perfect timing. Daniel did not try to fight them fairly. He dropped low as the first wave of attacks passed through the space where his head had been. He rolled forward, passing beneath the guard of the nearest soldier. His staff swept out and struck the back of the soldier's knee. The joint buckled and the guard fell with a scream of pain. One down. Daniel was already moving. He did not stop to celebrate or assess. He flowed from one position to the next like water finding its path through stone. His staff became a blur, striking joints and pressure points with surgical precision. The second guard swung a massive axe at Daniel's back. Daniel stepped aside at the last moment, letting the axe pass so close that it tore his shirt. Then he drove his staff into the guard's elbow. The joint shattered. The axe clattered to the floor. Two down. The remaining guards adjusted their formation. They were professionals. They recognized that their standard tactics were not working. They spread out to prevent Daniel from using their numbers against them. It did not matter. Daniel understood their training. He could see the patterns in their movements, the formations they had practiced thousands of times. Their coordination was their strength, but it was also their weakness. They moved in predictable ways because they had never faced an enemy who could read those patterns. He attacked the third guard before the formation was complete. His staff cracked against the side of the guard's skull, not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to knock him unconscious instantly. Three down. The fourth and fifth guards attacked together, their forearms each swinging weapons in deadly arcs. Daniel ducked under one attack, blocked another with his staff and stepped between them. He struck twice, once to each guard's throat. Both of them collapsed, choking but alive. Five down. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not possible. This could not be happening. One small human was dismantling their elite guards as if they were children playing with toys. Maya watched from the diplomatic section with tears in her eyes. Not tears of fear, but tears of something else. Pride, perhaps. Relief. She had served with Daniel for years. She had seen him train every single day, pushing his body and mind beyond limits that most people could not imagine. She had wondered sometimes if all that training was worth anything in a galaxy full of stronger species. Now she had her answer. 6, 7, and 8 fell in rapid succession. Daniel moved through them like a storm, his staff finding weak points and vulnerable joints with unerring accuracy. He broke bones when necessary but avoided lethal strikes. He was not here to kill. He was here to demonstrate. 9 and 10 tried to retreat, to create distance so they could use their reach advantage. Daniel did not let them. He closed the gap before they could react, disabling them with precise strikes to their legs. 11 and 12 made their final stand together, back to back, weapons raised in defensive positions. They were breathing hard. Their confidence was shattered. They had watched their comrades fall and they knew they would be next. Daniel approached them slowly. He was not even breathing hard. "You can surrender," he said calmly. "There is no shame in it." For a moment, neither guard moved. Then the one on the left lowered his weapon and dropped to his knees. He had seen enough. He wanted no more part of this. The remaining guard attacked with desperate fury, swinging his blade with all the strength he could summon. Daniel stepped inside the swing, caught the guard's arm, and twisted. The guard flipped through the air and crashed onto his back. Daniel's staff pressed against his throat, not hard enough to injure, just hard enough to make the point clear. "It is over," Daniel said. The guard stopped struggling. The arena fell completely silent. 12 elite guards lay scattered across the floor, groaning in pain or unconscious. The entire fight had taken less than 90 seconds. Not one of them was dead, but none of them would fight again today. Daniel lowered his staff and turned to face King. The king stood frozen on his platform. His golden scales had turned pale. His four hands trembled at his sides. He had never seen anything like this. No one had ever seen anything like this. "Your Majesty," Daniel said. His voice carried clearly through the silent throne room. "Humanity did not come to your empire seeking war. We came seeking friendship. We came hopping to find allies among the stars." He paused and looked around at the thousands of watching faces. "But if your people mistake our kindness for weakness, you will learn the difference. Humans have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. We have invented weapons that can destroy entire cities. We have survived plagues and famines and disasters that should have ended our species many times over. We are still here. We will always be here." Daniel met the king's eyes directly. "We prefer peace, but do not think for a moment that we cannot wage war." King's hand moved toward his own blade. His rage demanded action. His pride screamed for vengeance. But before he could draw his weapon, another voice cut through the silence. "Wait." It was. She had risen to her feet at last. She stood at the edge of the arena, her ceremonial swords still lying on the floor where she had dropped them. Her eyes were fixed on Daniel with an expression that had nothing to do with hatred. "By ancient law," said, "a defeated warrior has the right to judge her conqueror's worth." The crowd stirred. This was an old tradition, rarely invoked but still binding. "This human defeated me with honor," continued. "He showed mercy when he could have killed. He harmed none more than necessary. By our own code, he has earned the right to be heard." King glared at his champion with fury. "You would defend this creature?" he demanded. Met his gaze without flinching. "I would uphold our traditions, my king, even when they demand difficult things." The king's hand fell away from his blade. He was trapped by his own laws. To ignore judgment would undermine the warrior culture that gave him power. His face twisted with barely controlled rage as he looked at Daniel. "It seems," the king said through gritted teeth, "that we have more to discuss." The hours that followed were unlike anything the court had ever witnessed. The proud king who had demanded humiliation now sat across from the human he had tried to destroy. The throne room had been cleared. Only a handful of advisors remained, along with Maya, and the negotiations had begun. Daniel spoke calmly, as if the battle in the arena had never happened. He presented Earth's position clearly and simply. Humanity wanted trade agreements. Humanity wanted diplomatic recognition. Humanity wanted the chance to prove itself as a valuable member of the galactic community. King listened with barely contained anger. Every word from the human felt like salt in an open wound. His greatest warrior had fallen in seconds. His elite guards had been scattered like leaves, and now he had to negotiate with the creature who had done it. "Why should we accept any agreement with your kind?" the king demanded. "You are still small, you are still few, your technology is generations behind our own." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "All of that is true, your majesty," he replied. "Humanity is young among the stars. We have much to learn, but consider what you saw today. If one human with a wooden staff can defeat your finest warriors, what could 1,000,000 humans accomplish? What could 1,000,000,000 accomplish?" The king's advisors exchanged worried glances. They had been thinking the same thing since the arena fell silent. The reports about humanity suddenly seemed incomplete. Dangerous gaps in their intelligence had been exposed. "We do not wish to accomplish conquest," Daniel continued. "We have seen enough war among ourselves. Our history is filled with blood and fire. We nearly destroyed our own world several times before we learned better. Now we seek a different path." Stepped forward. She had been silent since invoking the ancient tradition, but her eyes had never left Daniel. "Tell me of your history," she said. "Tell me how your species learned to fight." Daniel turned to face her. He saw genuine curiosity in her expression, not hostility. "Humans are not naturally strong," he said. "We have no claws, no armor, no venom. When our ancestors first walked the plains of Earth, they were prey for larger predators. They survived not through strength but through intelligence and cooperation." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We learned to study our enemies. We watched how they moved, how they attacked, how they defended. We found their weaknesses and exploited them. We created weapons to extend our reach. We developed strategies to overcome superior numbers." "But your physical abilities," pressed. "What I witnessed was not simply strategy. Your body moved in ways I have never seen." Daniel smiled slightly. For thousands of years, humans have refined the art of combat. Different cultures developed different techniques, some focused on striking, others on grappling, others on using an opponent's strength against them. I have spent my life studying these arts and combining them into something new. King leaned forward despite himself. His curiosity was beginning to overcome his anger. You claim to have devoted your life to combat, the king said. Yet you speak of peace. This seems contradictory. Not at all, Daniel replied. I learned to fight precisely because I understood what violence costs. I have seen friends die. I have seen cities burn. I have seen the grief that follows every battle, no matter who wins. Peace is not weakness. Peace is the choice made by those who understand war best. Maya watched the exchange with growing hope. Daniel was reaching them. She could see the shift in the room, the way they were beginning to reconsider their assumptions. Your species nearly destroyed itself, said. You mentioned this before. How did you survive? Daniel's expression grew somber. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet. Bombs that could vaporize entire cities in an instant. We built enough of them to destroy our world many times over. For decades, our nation stood ready to launch these weapons at each other. They listened in silence. They knew of such weapons. Their own empire possessed them, but they had never considered using them against themselves. We came so close, Daniel continued. Several times we nearly ended everything, but somehow we stepped back from the edge. We chose survival over destruction. We chose the future over revenge. And now you seek that future among the stars, said. Yes, we cannot change our past. The blood that was spilled remains spilled, but we can build something better. We can become the species we wish to be rather than the species we were. King sat back in his throne. The rage had faded from his face, replaced by something more complex. He was a warrior king, raised to value strength above all else. But he was not a fool. He could see the implications of what Daniel was saying. A species that had faced extinction and survived was not weak. A species that had learned to control its most destructive impulses was not to be underestimated. A species that chose peace while capable of devastating war was perhaps the most dangerous kind of all. What exactly do you propose? The king asked finally. Daniel laid out the terms, trade agreements that would benefit both parties, cultural exchanges to build understanding, a mutual non-aggression pact that would protect both Earth and the Empire from external threats, nothing that would threaten sovereignty, nothing that would require the Empire to change its ways. In return, Daniel said, humanity asks only for the chance to prove itself. Let us show you what we can offer. Let us demonstrate that we can be valuable allies rather than amusing pets. The king considered this for a long moment. And if we refuse, he asked, what then? Daniel met his gaze steadily. Then we will leave and seek friendship elsewhere. The galaxy is vast. There are many species who might welcome what we offer, but I believe the Empire would benefit from having us as allies rather than watching us strengthen others. It was a subtle warning, delivered without threat. The king understood it perfectly. You negotiate like a warrior, said grudgingly. I was a warrior before I became a diplomat, Daniel replied. I learned that the best victories are won without bloodshed. The enemy you defeat in battle may hate you forever. The enemy you defeat through negotiation may become your greatest friend. Spoke again. My king, I believe we should accept these terms. The human has proven his worth. His species has earned our respect. Other advisors nodded in agreement. The mood in the room had shifted completely. What had begun as humiliation had become something unexpected. Not quite friendship, but perhaps the foundation for it. King closed his eyes. His pride demanded that he refuse. His wisdom demanded that he accept. Wisdom won. Very well, the king said slowly. The Empire will enter into preliminary negotiations with Earth. We make no promises beyond that, but we will talk. Daniel bowed respectfully. That is all we ask, Your Majesty, a chance to talk. The king rose from his throne and turned to leave. He paused at the door and looked back at Daniel. You are a strange creature, human said. I tried to destroy you, and you respond with offers of friendship. I do not understand your species. Daniel smiled. Perhaps that is something we can work on together. The king left without another word, but remained behind. She approached Daniel with a different look in her eyes than before. I would speak with you privately, she said, if you are willing. Daniel nodded. Of course. They walked together toward a side chamber, leaving Maya alone in the throne room. She watched them go with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The mission had not gone according to plan, but somehow, impossibly, it had succeeded beyond anything they could have hoped. Humanity had earned its place at the table. The side chamber was smaller than the throne room but still impressive by human standards. Walls of polished stone stretched upward toward a domed ceiling painted with scenes of ancient battles. Soft light filtered through crystal windows, casting everything in a warm glow. Stood near the center of the room, her arms crossed over her chest. Without her ceremonial armor, she seemed smaller somehow, more approachable. The fierce warrior who had faced Daniel in the arena was still there, but something had changed in her bearing. You could have killed me, she said without preamble. That strike to my nerve cluster. You knew exactly what it would do. You could have struck differently and ended my life. Yes, Daniel admitted, I could have. Why did you choose not to? Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. Because killing you would have served no purpose. You were not my enemy. You were a soldier following orders. I did not come here to make war. I came to make peace. Killing the king's champion would have made peace impossible. Nodded slowly. This was an answer she could understand. There is more to it than that, she said. I saw something in your eyes during our fight. You did not hate me. You did not enjoy hurting me. Most warriors find joy in victory. You found none. Joy in causing pain is something I lost long ago, Daniel said. I have seen too much suffering to celebrate creating more. Every opponent I face is someone's child, someone's friend, someone's purpose for living. Even in victory, there is loss. Was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the arena. Would you teach me? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? Your way of fighting, your philosophy. I have spent my entire life believing that strength meant victory in combat, that the purpose of a warrior was to destroy enemies. You showed me that strength can mean something else, that a warrior can choose mercy without being weak. She paused, searching for the right words. I want to understand. I want to learn how someone so small could see so clearly. My empire has conquered many worlds, but we have never truly understood the species we defeated. Perhaps that is why we have never known peace. Daniel studied her face. He saw sincerity there. He saw the beginning of doubt about everything she had been taught to believe. It was a fragile thing, this new understanding. It could easily be crushed by pride or fear. But it could also grow into something powerful. I cannot stay here long enough to teach you properly, Daniel said. My duty takes me back to Earth, but perhaps we can arrange something else. An exchange suggested. Yes, warriors could visit Earth to learn our combat arts. Human soldiers could come here to learn yours, not to prepare for war but to build understanding. When people train together, when they share sweat and pain and triumph, they form bonds that transcend species. His eyes brightened. I will propose this to the king. After today, he may be more open to such ideas than he would have been before. You risked much by invoking that ancient law, Daniel said, was furious with you. He was, agreed. But he is a king who respects tradition, even when it contradicts his wishes, and he is wise enough to recognize when he has underestimated an enemy. You are not what he expected, Daniel Cooper. Humanity is not what any of us expected. They talked for another hour, sharing stories of their respective cultures, spoke of the warrior traditions that had shaped society for thousands of years. Daniel spoke of Earth's complicated history, its wars and its progress, its failures and its hopes. By the time they finished, something unexpected had formed between them. Not quite friendship, but the possibility of it. A connection between two people who should have been enemies but chose to be something else. When Daniel finally left the chamber, Maya was waiting for him in the corridor. She looked exhausted but relieved. The preliminary agreement has been signed, she said. Earth and the Empire will begin formal negotiations within the month. The king has also agreed to release a statement acknowledging humanity's value as potential allies. That is more than we hoped for, Daniel said. Much more. Maya fell into step beside him as they walked toward the landing platform where their shuttle waited. What did want? To learn, Daniel replied, and to teach. I think she may become an important ally in the years ahead. Maya smiled. You always did have a talent for turning enemies into friends. Not a talent, Daniel corrected. A choice. Anyone can make an enemy, it takes effort to make a friend. They reached the landing platform and paused to look back at the massive palace complex. Guards stood at attention along the perimeter, watching them with a mixture of respect and wariness. The mood was very different from when they had arrived. "Do you think this will last?" Maya asked. "The peace, I mean the understanding." Daniel considered the question. "I do not know," he admitted. "Peace is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It requires constant work. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when war seems easier than negotiation. But I believe that if both sides remain committed, we can build something that endures." They boarded the shuttle and strapped themselves into their seats. The engines hummed to life. Through the viewport, Daniel watched the shrink as they climbed toward orbit. "Were you scared?" Maya asked suddenly. "During the fight, I mean, all those guards attacking at once. Were you afraid?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Terrified," he said finally, "the entire time." Maya laughed softly. "You hit it well. Hiding fear is the first thing humans learn. We are surrounded by predators from the moment we are born. On Earth, the weak creatures survive by appearing strong. The small survive by appearing large. We learn to wear masks before we learn to walk. And that is our greatest weapon," Maya said. "Not our technology or our numbers, our ability to seem like something we are not." Daniel shook his head. "No, our greatest weapon is our ability to become what we seem. We pretend to be brave until we are brave. We pretend to be strong until we are strong. We pretend to be peaceful until peace becomes who we truly are." The shuttle broke through the atmosphere and into the darkness of space. Stars filled the viewport, countless points of light scattered across the infinite black. Somewhere among them was Earth, a small blue planet where billions of humans went about their daily lives, unaware of what had happened today. They would learn soon enough. The news would spread across the galaxy. The species that everyone had dismissed as weak and insignificant had faced the mightiest warriors of the Empire and emerged victorious, not through superior weapons or overwhelming force, but through skill and wisdom and the simple choice to seek peace over war. Humanity had taken its first real step onto the galactic stage, and the universe would never see them the same way again. Daniel closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of rest. Tomorrow there would be more work, more negotiations, more challenges to face. The road ahead was long and uncertain. But today, against all odds, humanity had proven something important. They belonged among the stars, and they were here to stay.